This is Orlando Sentinel Now.
Hello and welcome. It's Thursday, January 6th, and this is Orlando Sentinel Now. Today, we're talking about the surge of Omicron in Central Florida hospitals, plus why you should buy local when it comes to buying a bike. I'm your host, Joe Mario Pedersen, and joining me today, I have health reporter Caroline Catherman and Things to Do reporter Patrick Connolly. Thank you both so much for joining us today. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. Caroline, coming to you first here, talking about AdventHealth and COVID-19 hospitalizations surging. I want to talk to you now about first, how much of a surge are we seeing?
So at the moment, there's around, I think, 450-ish patients across AdventHealth hospitals, which are in 7 counties around the Orlando area. So it's not too much, but what's concerning is that just a few days ago, it was more like 200 something patients. So it's pretty much doubled in just the course of a few days. And before that, it had doubled in about a week. And so to me, this is reminding me of when I was covering the Delta surge and things just started doubling and it kept getting faster and faster. And what's concerning is that at a news briefing yesterday, AdventHealth's epidemiologist, Vincent Hsu, essentially said that they don't think they've seen the peak yet.
When we look at at the data that comes from countries that have had Omicron earlier, a good example would be South Africa. It took about a good 30 days or at least a month from the time they really started rising up before they hit their peak. Central Florida, we started our surge somewhere around mid-December. So a lot of us are looking and saying, well, we probably are in another couple of weeks until we hit mid-January. Hopefully by that time we will start seeing a decrease, but it's really hard to make predictions.
Caroline, I'm wondering if you can paint a bit of a picture here for us, because while the surge is growing and we're seeing those numbers rise, it might be kind of hard for some people, some of us, me included, to picture exactly what that looks like. So as far as what that impact looks like in the hospital, what are patients showing as far as symptoms go? How is the ICU filling up in terms of Omicron patients now versus, as you mentioned, the Delta wave over the summer?
Yeah, so the great thing is that not as many patients are ending up in the ICU. They are typically coming in with, maybe they need some oxygen, but not to ICU, like unconscious in a ventilator level of oxygen. They have coughs, they have fevers. I will say, though, that it's still pretty serious to end up in the hospital at all. You have a better chance of coming out of it alive than you do if, say, you end up in the ICU. But there can still be serious, long-lasting effects. So it still is really important to take this virus seriously.
Absolutely. As you mentioned, and any hospitalization is seriously a serious ordeal. In terms of elective surgeries, have we heard from AdventHealth experts talking about whether or not that is going to continue?
Yeah, so as of yesterday, elective surgeries are still going to occur. It is something that they have been discussing, and I wouldn't be surprised if in the next few weeks, if cases continue to increase at this rate, it is something that is taken away. Of course, that's just me speculating based on the pattern I'd seen with Delta. They did mention that right now, their biggest crunch on resources comes from staffing shortages. They have a number of staff that are out with COVID-19, and it's pretty much always staffing shortages are an issue, but especially with the infectiousness of the Omicron variant, more and more staff are getting it.
Caroline, now you've been jumping in and out of Zoom calls talking to health experts about what this surge has looked like. And one concerning notion has been the level of children that we've seen in hospitals. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
In hospitals right now, proportionately than adults, adult levels are nowhere near the number we saw hospitalized during the Delta surge. But with kids, the numbers are similar to what we saw during the Delta surge. Now, there are two things that are a little bit different. First of all, about half the kids, at least at Nemours, which gave me their numbers, are in the hospital with COVID as opposed to because of COVID. They are in there for something else and incidentally tested positive for COVID after admission, because everyone who's admitted to the hospital does get tested. Another thing is they are not ending up as sick. So same with adults, they are less likely to be in the ICU. However, these kids are the ones hospitalized with COVID, they are having trouble breathing. They are having really high fevers. So it is something concerning.
Absolutely. There's a lot more detail on this, everyone. If you're interested in following up with it and keeping up with it, make sure to follow Caroline's stories at orlandosentinel.com to find out more. Caroline, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, Patrick, I want to come over to you now. Our Central Florida explorer, exploring not just the lay of the land here in Florida, but also different shops pertaining to how to get more active out there in Florida. Pretty soon, you've got a column coming out about bike shops and why you should buy local instead of going to big name stores. Patrick, why should you be doing that?
Sure. Well, I definitely want to talk about the bike shops, but first wanted to introduce kind of my new weekly column, which will involve different kinds of outdoor expertise, some opinions, and also a little bit of gear advice sprinkled in there. So you'll still be hearing from me as the Central Florida Explorer every week, but it'll be a little different than last year's explorations, which involved going to a different park or trail every week. That was very fun. My job was literally a walk in the park. But I've now wrapped that all up with a neat bow by naming some of my favorite parks throughout the course of the year, and a big list of park and trail superlatives, naming the ones best for birding, best for views, best for, most terrain, you name it. So I've tried to name some of my favorites, and now we are punctuating that with a nice exclamation point and moving on. And so this year I wanted to open it up. As I mentioned, I'll be getting to other gear reviews and outdoor advice and trying to answer some questions in the process. I wanted to start off 2022 by making a case for supporting your local bike shop. And now I think for some people who read this or who are listening to this, I may be preaching to the choir. People who are, either casual cyclists or even, more dedicated athletes who just love to spend time multiple days a week on their bike, they might see already the value and merit in supporting their local shop. Who I was hoping to reach in this column was the people who, even as I remember growing up, it was pretty tempting for my parents or, you run to Target or Walmart, Dick's Sporting Goods, big box store to pick up a bike, especially if the kids are going to outgrow it, you figure drop $100, $200, that's no big deal. Going to a local shop, you may spend at least twice that on a bike for yourself or, as a present. But I'm trying to make a case that is absolutely worth every penny that you spend there. For one, whenever you go into a local bike shop, you're going to get more than likely friendly staff, solid advice and about which bike to buy, even where you're going to ride. And you're also getting the peace of mind that that bike that you're buying from a local shop was put together by a trained mechanic, not just someone who happened to, sort of know how to use a wrench at Target or whatever. So those are a couple reassurances there. Not to mention the idea that, a dollar that you spend locally is much more likely to stay local, whereas if you go to a big box store, that dollar will probably be, funneled up to corporate executives in some faraway place. So those are just a couple reasons right there for trying to support your local bike shop.
Certainly an adamant case there. Patrick, as far as maybe some of your favorite shops, if people are looking to go local, could you give us some examples?
So personally, I have supported at least a few local shops. I've stopped in David's World Cycle, of which they have a couple locations around. I've been up to Orange Cycle on Edgewater because I live in College Park. I've supported Kyle's Bike Shop before, Adventure Cycling in Winter Springs. More recently, my favorite, because I've gotten very much into mountain bike riding, is Adrenaline Bike Works. It's in Mount Dora. And I think that should tell you something about the quality of this shop, the fact that I'm willing to drive to Mount Dora for a bike shop. And more than just being a shop, they've serviced my bike. I really trust their mechanics there. I've bought, different accessories and parts from them. But more than that, Adrenaline, owned by Sean Lukens, he's a former cop, and now he's transitioned into the world of bikes. He has 2 kids of his own, 3 kids. His 2 boys are always out in the parking lot hitting jumps, just shredding. Sometimes I've followed them into different features on the trails because they can really show me, teach me a lesson or two. But meaning to say, one of Sean's big objectives in running a bike shop is community. He says it's about community first, bike shop second, which is not something that people may immediately think of whenever it comes to a shop. But I've found that in spending more time up there at the shop, they have draft beer, they'll host events, they have a little pump track in the shop, they have a pool table. It's really designed as a place to hang out. They do weekly trail rides, they do events at the shop, and it's really amazing to see a community come together over a shop. And kind of in an unofficial survey I did of Central Florida mountain bikers on one of the Facebook groups, a lot of people brought up adrenaline, just kind of showing that they're really doing something right there. People notice the difference whenever they get the attention, the advice, the quality products. And more than that, like I mentioned, the community is a big part of that, that can be an extension of a bike shop in a best case scenario. And I think that there's a handful of shops here who are really good at building community that way.
There you go. Be on the lookout for Patrick's Support Your Local Central Florida Bike Shop coming out real soon, and for some fresh new columns coming out every week. Patrick, thank you so much. All right, now before we all leave you today, we do want to talk about Thursday's weather presented by Premier Sotheby's International Realty. Thursday's weather is looking mostly clear in Central Florida with little chance of rain. The high is forecast at 73 and the low at 57. We have several cold fronts moving in over the next few days, keeping that layer of cool air over Central Florida through the weekend. Temperature lows Friday and Saturday are forecast for 57 and 56. Temperatures scoot up a bit into the 60s during the weekend evenings and into the next work week. But you can find out more by taking a look at OrlandoSentinel.com, where you can get caught up with all the stories that we talked about here today as well. For those of you who are subscribed to the Orlando Sentinel, thank you so much for continuing to support our work and supporting local journalism. If you want to become a subscriber, it's easy to do so. All you need to do is visit OrlandoSentinel.com/subscribe. But as for OSN, that will do it for us today. A big thank you to Carolyn and Patrick for giving us all the news going on in our hometown and keeping us up to date. Now, if you want more news, tune in tomorrow back at noon. We'll see you then. Stay healthy and stay safe.
Watch Orlando Sentinel Now live every weekday at noon on our Facebook page and on OrlandoSentinel.com.